All right, well, good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to our school board workshop for Tuesday, May 5th. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order. And thank you, Bob. Good morning.
Good morning.
And as we always do, I'll hand it over to Vice Chair Atkinson.
Thank you very much. The very first item on the agenda is the in-house staff attorney conversation.
Yes, ma'am, and I thank you, Ms. Atkinson, and I will invite Mr. Brian Williams and Mr. Marcus Allen if you'd like to join us as well. So, board, you have seen this PowerPoint before. The author of this PowerPoint is Mr. Brian Williams. Brian, I'm gonna try to get this right, so please correct me if I'm wrong. You are currently the in-house counsel at Polk in Volusia. I believe you worked at Palm Beach and Lee County and Collier County, Miami-Dade. I may be missing one or two.
Sarasota and DeSoto.
Sarasota and DeSoto. So welcome. What Mr. Williams is gonna guide us on, and the question that we asked him is does it make sense for a district our size to have in-house counsel? And so, Mr. Williams has done some research for us and we'll briefly go through this, hit some highlights, and then answer any questions that you all may have.
Well, thank you, and good morning. And I'm gonna try to make this as interactive as possible because I think this is one of those conversations where questions are just as valuable as the presentation itself, because that helps dive us into exactly what we're dealing with here. And I can say as part of this presentation, as the superintendent mentioned, I've worked in the capacity as an in-house school board attorney for approximately 12 years, and then I've also represented as outside counsel school districts for at least 7 to 8 years as well. So in combination of those things, I think I have a kind of a good handle or perspective on the things that you would face in dealing with the decision on whether to hire in-house or outside counsel. And again, that's very fluid. It depends on your district, right? So in having this conversation, I want to preface that by saying the research that I did and the information that I'm sharing is specifically tailored for your district. What works for a large district such as Miami-Dade or a smaller district, may be two different things. It ultimately comes down to what are the best needs of the district? What exactly will that position do for you internally? And then also, probably the most important is the fiscal impact, right? So the costs. That being said, there's my background. Again, it kind of hosts all the districts that I've worked for. And I will say that in my private sector capacity, I am typically brought in to deal with very niche issues. For example, I consult or provide legal advice to a lot of districts on public-private partnerships on unsolicited proposals, for example, for building new schools. I just worked with Polk County to draft a comprehensive agreement for a $177 million new high school, for example. I've also been brought in to deal with ESE issues, for example. I just dealt with an issue in Osceola County involving a ESE student in an after-school care program and potential challenges to ADA. So your best use of outside counsel, in my opinion, is for those niche areas that may be more detailed in the legal issues that you're facing, and maybe outside the breadth of, say, an in-house general counsel who is essentially going to be what I call a Swiss Army knife. They're going to have to deal with a lot of different issues simultaneously. Again, you've all seen this before, so I like to do roadmaps. I am also a litigator, so I litigate a lot. So generally, these come in handy in explaining to juries where we're starting and where we're heading. Obviously, I'm going to be discussing your current legal structure, just my observations and considerations based on the information that I reviewed, recommendations, next steps, anticipated fiscal impact. I have actually a little bit more information for you this morning that based on some of the numbers that I looked at, and then also just taking your questions regarding the information. Again, this simply establishes, the statute establishes your ability to hire a lawyer. Oftentimes that is done direct with a school board attorney. You have districts that have a school board attorney and then a staff attorney for the superintendent. You have districts that hire a outside counsel to serve in that capacity. So again, there are a lot of different models, and in this case, the best model that may work for you is a hybrid of those two. Your current outside model, obviously you rely heavily on external firms, both in the capacity as your school board attorney, but also to deal with legal issues, which include both workers' compensation, tort and general liability. They serve in that capacity. It's kind of one person that serves as all. And a lot of districts do that because there is a benefit to having a law firm where you have experts in real estate, experts in construction, experts in ESC that are all in the same shop, so to speak, but not necessarily the same person. Obviously, you have an hourly billing structure, and you're currently paying for, one of the things I did notice about this district, which was a little odd for me, is that I believe your current contract actually pays for the attendance of your council at FSBAA conferences, which again is a little weird because typically that's something that's borne by the internal law firm. First and foremost, it's a business expense, which they could write off. Second of all, you don't typically see that passed on to the expenses of the district. You see that in the capacity of an in-house attorney who in their contract requires that they be a member of that association or national organizations in order to keep their obviously knowledge base in education law. One thing that I did see as well in reviewing your building, that there were a lot of inter-office conferences, which is essentially when two attorneys get together and discuss maybe a complicated legal issue. Obviously, that's not gonna occur with an in-house staff attorney, with the exception of maybe they'll reach out to a colleague. And that is something that I wanna mention as well. With an in-house staff attorney, you also have FSBAA, which is every school board attorney, whether it's a private law firm or an in-house attorney, essentially available to you. We have a listserv, which we don't like to talk about a lot, that they are able to share questions at the conferences. They actually do, at the end of the conference itself, a question and answer where every school district attorney goes around and has an opportunity to ask maybe a difficult question they're dealing with to the entire room and get feedback on. I used to target who I felt were specialists in respective areas, and when I had an issue in that area, those are the 2 or 3 people that I would call for construction, ESC. And again, there are some people, when you work for a district, you wear a lot of hats. There are a lot of areas of law to learn. Obviously, the larger districts have more attorneys that specialize. But when you're, kind of an island of one, you can utilize the resources that are available to you. And I can tell you that's an excellent resource. They do consistent training, I believe 3 conferences a year. But you also have the ability to just email them, call them, and ask relevant questions. I also did see in the billing, there was a lot of clerical work in the billing itself. And that could be anything from simply calling to schedule a meeting. Again, when you're trying to look at saving money, scheduling is not one of the things you typically see requiring any sort of specialized knowledge or skill, especially if you're just setting up meetings. Typically, as an outside counsel, my assistant will generally take care of those issues. And one of the things that I did also propose to the district is outside counsel guidelines. I believe I shared those, and I think Mr. Allen shared those as well. One of the reasons I did that is every district's a little bit different. Some have those, some don't. But it allows you to streamline the things that you're gonna pay for, including things like travel time, right? In county versus outer county. And so there are a lot of different things that kind of go into that pot, but it helps streamline. And my position is if you include that in your RFP when you're going out to solicit law firms, they know on the front end, so there's no real dispute about what they're gonna be doing and what the roles are. But it does help streamline and somewhat control those expenses. Again, travel time being, you also have frequently with the outside counsel model, routine tasks, which again could be absorbed by an in-house attorney that include, I saw a lot of garnishments, contract review, and solicitation review. Those are all things that I did when I was an in-house attorney at each of the districts that I worked at. Again, the challenges with outside counsel are just the high hourly rates. And when I say high hourly rates, based on the proposed fee structure that I believe has been established for hiring this individual, you would essentially be looking at, and I like to use round numbers, but I'll use the easiest, approximately $100 an hour if you were to hire a staff attorney. That would be the hourly rate that you would be paying them for arguably 1,800 hours worth of work. Right now, you're paying as needed. So you're getting approximately half of that, but having a 40-hour-a-week employee, which will likely work more than 40 hours, which is what I did, you work when you're needed. You're really, over the long run, absolutely saving money because currently you're managing what you call legal for. I think when you have someone in-house, the in-house attorney sits in procurement meetings. I sat on student discipline hearings. I sat in employee investigations. I was at board meetings. I, pretty much attended everything. I attended workshops. And so you have the ability to be in the room with staff and assist the staff in making a lot of decisions, and you really help manage the risk. It's a lot easier to ask the legal department questions on the front end as opposed to the back end when things might get a little off. It's also my understanding the firm is located off-site. Again, education law is a vast area. There are a lot of hats to wear. Employment, again, IDEA, charter schools, all different statutes, procurement, construction. There are just a lot of different areas, and it's very difficult to find one attorney that knows all of those things, including in one law firm. Again, with respect to the proposed solution recommendations, my recommendation is, and again, after looking at your information, even looking at the fiscal impact, which I will acknowledge is very tight based on what your expenses are annually. I will say that looking at your annual expenses, they have gone up every year, so they tend to increase, which is not unexpected because you get some growth, you get more legal issues. Unfortunately, we've had hurricanes, we've had COVID, which again extend the amount of legal expenses that you may incur. But those are the type of things that would be absorbed if you had in-house, because again, you're getting an minimum 1,800 hour a year attorney at a fixed salary, right? So that salary doesn't go up based on the number of hours they work. If they work 1,900 hours, it still doesn't go up. And so again, you don't have the concerns about limiting your capacity of use of that attorney. But more importantly, the knowledge that you get being in-house, sitting in all those meetings, working with staff day to day, is invaluable. You also grow. You grow with the district because you're part of the district. And again, that's not to say that you can't do some of that being an external counsel, but you're just able to be there. You're able to be present more. I sat on collective bargaining on both staff and teachers. So I was in the negotiations. I mean, you see it at almost every level. And again, I think you're gonna get faster response times because at the end of the day, not only can you send an email, but you can knock on their door because they're right there. You're gonna get proactive risk management, again, that helps prevent legal issues because you're not concerned about how many hours you're gonna spend having them research that issue or be present at your meetings. I think you're gonna get improved consistency because some of this work is repetitive. And so once you do it 10 times, it starts to speed up the process, you become more familiar, and then you're just fixing and again, making changes based on updated statutes or things that may change in the law. You also have an in-house attorney that can monitor your outside counsel's legal bills. So that's one of the things I also did is I reviewed outside counsel legal bills. And I remember when I first got to Miami, they had staff in our facilities department that had no legal background and really didn't know what they were looking at reviewing attorney's bills, and they didn't really know what to question versus not question. And at the time, they were spending, in just my area, which was construction business operations, $3 million annually. $3 million annually on outside legal counsel expenses. Again, obviously that's the largest school district in the state. But what I noticed when I started looking at those bills is that we were paying for things that were outside our outside counsel guidelines, and there was a lot of work that should not have likely been billed for, and that changed. And I think now they pay annually that they staffed it in-house $200,000 a year. So they went from $3 million to $200,000. As just an example. Again, that in-house attorney can also address legal conflicts of interest between the school board and the superintendent. That's where anytime you have a conflict with an in-house attorney, whether they represent the board or the superintendent, you're always going to employ another counsel to represent both parties' interests. You see that a lot with current general counsels that serve as the board attorney and then also advise the superintendent. If a conflict exists in that scenario, they would represent the board, they would hire an outside counsel to represent the superintendent. If they're employed by the superintendent, vice versa, they would hire someone to represent the board. There should always be someone representing both of those parties' interests in the event there is a conflict. Again, this is just an outline of the different areas where I see the advantages, both on the operational side, case handling, and risk management being key. A lot of people don't place a lot of value on this. I do, because I see the amount of money that you're saving by making legal issues go away before they become actual legal issues. And unfortunately, the public doesn't see that. They don't see when the in-house attorney dealt with a legal issue, and it could be as easy as having a phone conversation with a parent on an ESC issue before she files a due process action. A lot of times, the proactive nature of meeting and communicating with, whether it's a parent, a vendor, will negate some of the legal action that takes place. Most people don't want to file lawsuits because they don't want to spend the money. But they will file lawsuits if you don't communicate with them and effectively resolve the issue. So again, there's some avoidance on that. Also, in my in-house capacity, I sat on the insurance committee. So I helped pick our policies and address issues in regards to risk management. I drafted our Title IX policy. I did a checklist so that staff could know exactly how to walk through a Title IX process. Again, all things internal. Child custody, I drafted guidelines for child custody. So when a principal gets a parent that shows up that doesn't have a birth certificate, hasn't established paternity, they know exactly what to do. Again, I'm recommending a staff attorney, but I think there are still areas that you'll want to send outside. But these are a few areas that I think that an in-house staff attorney could handle. Again, I just mentioned child custody. Student enrollment is also an issue. Collier, when I was in Collier, they had a lot of people trying to come from out of county into Collier and not following the law with respect to that. You have FERPA, ESC issues, FHSAA. Now, people see that and like, what are those issues? You do have issues with FHSAA. We had a big issue when they had the referee strike, for example. I remember Lee was one of the only holdouts in that whole process. Truancy, student discipline, charter schools, grants. On the operational side, you have contract review, which my understanding is a significant issue in terms of cost in this district. In-house attorney could likely streamline that, create form contracts for both school sites and standard contracts year to year. You're not gonna get that with a Microsoft or your insurance contract. But there are contracts that I think you probably enter into both annually or every 3 to 5 years that are pretty routine and consistent. And I think that absent the language that is required by our auditors, once you have that in there, it's a pretty consistent contract that, again, you're changing dates and amounts. On the employment side, collective bargaining, EEOC and OCR complaints, obviously those are administrative complaints that are handled prior to federal litigation taking place. I think that's definitely something that an in-house attorney can handle. ADA determinations, Title IX, FMLA. Those are just a few of the things that I think could be handled internally by in-house counsel. Again, you have different models that you can do. You can hire a staff attorney with assistance from outside counsel. You can have a general counsel that serves in the capacity of the board attorney and then also advises the superintendent, or you can split the roles and do a school board attorney and a staff attorney, which is what some districts are doing. And again, it depends on your district. I'm not recommending that per se. I think you're going to see significant costs based on how many hours you can shift internally, both from the board capacity as well as advising district staff. But that's where you're essentially gonna see the value. And I just think that if you simply look at what you're spending, that may not be the best way to look at it. I think you have to also look at what you're not spending because you don't want to go over budget, right? And again, you shouldn't be in a position where you don't wanna call your attorney if you want to. You should be able to call and have your attorney present on a consistent, regular basis where your concern is not monetary. And I think that, and based on those things, I think it's in the best interest of the district, again, to adopt that. And in terms of implementing this, obviously, I think Marcus and staff have a job description. That needs to be a little bit fluid too, because again, you're gonna hear criticism that, there's not a lot of school board education attorneys out there, who has experience in this area. But that can be recruited. And I say that, and again, I can only speak from my personal experience. When I was the attorney at Lee County, I hired three attorneys. One of them came from the county. One of them came from Illinois. One of them came from Wisconsin. Now, all of them were barred in Florida, had previously worked in Florida. The one that came from Wisconsin actually was a teacher in our system before they went to law school. The attorney that came from Illinois was a barred Florida attorney who worked for Legal Aid in Collier before she came back to Florida. So I managed to get 2 out-of-state people who wanted to come back to Florida that were barred in Florida and had the relevant experience. It just takes advertising, and again, there are resources available to you to try to identify the right fit for you. And then obviously transition some of that work from outside counsel, and I don't think it makes sense to transition all of it from outside counsel. You obviously have an established counsel that has done work for you and knows a lot of your processes and systems. So I think it would be gradual, where you would really see the benefit of that. Again, these are rough numbers, and I think the numbers that I was expressing earlier are probably easier to digest in terms of giving an hourly value to that in-house employee and then equating that to what you're spending in terms of outside counsel. So I believe the rates are like $250 an hour. Again, if your average hourly rate for that in-house attorney, and I think that's based on them also having staff, is roughly around $100 an hour, you're essentially saving $150 an hour every time you use that attorney. So you're not gonna see that break-even point right off the bat, because again, I will say that you have a fairly good, decent rate. I mean, the $250 an hour is pretty consistent with the state, but it's pretty consistent with government rates, so you're getting good value there. But again, I think where you would get more value is having the ability to use your attorney more. That being said, I think I'm done with the presentation, and I will take any questions that you may have. Grab my water.
Anybody have any questions?
Maybe you can answer this question. Thank you for the presentation.
Hey, no worries.
I noticed that a lot of districts who have in-house attorneys are larger districts. Do you have an opinion on why it's mostly large districts with in-house attorneys versus smaller districts?
Well, I think it varies on that too, because just to use that as an example, I know Clay County itself is a pretty decent size on the smaller side of things, and they have an in-house attorney. I just dealt with Osceola. They have both a general in-house board attorney and an in-house staff attorney. I've dealt with Seminole. They have a in-house general counsel and an in-house staff attorney. Obviously, they're Browards, Palm Beaches, and Miami-Dades of the world as you start to get into the larger. Those are extremely more complex districts. For example, Miami-Dade has a police department, for example, right? So you got legal issues that are generated on that side alone. Obviously, collective bargaining is a bigger deal. Actually, Miami has a different model than I think most people have. They actually have one attorney that is completely dedicated to bargaining. That's all they do. They don't even work within the legal component. But I think when it comes to smaller districts, obviously it's a fiscal concern. Can we justify having an in-house legal counsel based on the cost that it would have to have an outside counsel that we use in a limited capacity? I see that a lot, and I'm general counsel to a community development district, for example, and I've also been general counsel to community associations, and I see a lot of times where they seek to not use their attorney because they want to stay within a fixed budget, and I see that generally when I'm in litigation on a lot of their matters. But I think really it becomes fiscal, why smaller districts do it. I think the larger districts recognize the value of finding experienced lawyers in specific areas. So for example, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach have, I think, at minimum, each of those districts have 10+ attorneys, right? And in that capacity, they specialize in specific areas. So you have someone for charter schools, Miami-Dade has someone that just does contracts, for example. I think there you have the ability, and it justifies the need based on the size and the amount of legal issues. It's just a capacity issue too. Can one in-house attorney realistically handle all of the legal issues for 300,000 students and 50,000 employees? So I think it bases on that. I know a lot of the districts up in the Panhandle have law firms, like Bay and a lot of the smaller districts. And again, I think that it just becomes a fiscal capacity issue, or maybe even an established practice. I know Martin, for example, ironically, the school board attorney or the general counsel in Collier was one of the people I mentioned that I recruited. That was one of the people that I hired when I brought into Lee. When I left Lee to go to Collier, she left Lee to go to Sniffen and Spellman, which is a law firm that specializes in education law. And at that time, I know she was serving in the capacity of the board attorney for Martin County and was actually traveling from Collier to Martin. And she was sitting on collective bargaining. And I know she told me during that time that staff expressed an interest in bringing her on full time because she was always there, right? She was always in the building. And I think their bargaining process really got spread out over time. And she was frequently there dealing with those legal issues. So I think it's not I don't think it's not something that they consider. I just think maybe the structure has already been established a certain way and they haven't had this kind of meeting.
So you had mentioned consistency, history with the district. In your experience, it seems like this would be a position that a lot of people like retention. I mean,
Yeah.
Is this a position that is highly mobile? I mean, someone comes in, works a couple of years, gets out of the district, and then gets hired off to someone else. I mean, in your experience, is this a problem?
I don't necessarily think it's a problem if the role is allowed to grow within the district. And obviously, I'd say a lot of attorneys stay where they're at. Whether it's geographic decisions, if they're having, obviously, you have a family that's growing up in a certain area. If you're from this area, went away to school, came back, you want to stay here, the retention issues that I'm seeing statewide, because there have been, I mean, you're obviously asking that question because you've seen some things. I think you've got a group of attorneys, I call them the old guard, that have been there for a while, and they are starting to retire out. And so you have you kind of have them at each level in terms, and so you see a lot of vacancies due to someone retiring out. Where you see some of the lateral movement is maybe a attorney either wanting to go a much larger district, and that becomes honestly compensation. They see it as a bigger opportunity, more money, but they're essentially doing the same role, maybe on a grander scale. But for the most part, most of the attorneys that I see have historically stayed where they're at. They may make one move. I made moves because I moved. I literally moved for geographical reasons, but and so that explains my kind of career path. But generally, most of the attorneys I see have longstanding been at most districts, or at minimum been at 2 different districts.
All right, thank you. All right, so last question for me. You had given us an estimate on the staff attorney. Is there a difference, would there be a different estimate if we decided to go with general counsel for board and the staff? Is that sort of the same estimate, or is it?
No, that's a great question. I think it would be different because again, they'd be absorbing and I don't know if you share this, but essentially there's different roles there. And once you combine them, then obviously that's a lot of work for one person to digest. But it also presents itself as a very big cost savings issue because, again, that's attendance at board meetings, serving as parliamentarian, serving here at workshops if you choose to have your attorney present. So yeah, I think the model would be a little bit different. And actually, I think you would probably see your most cost savings in that model because they would be absorbing a lot more than just having a staff attorney that's dealing with more staff-related issues than anything else. Because with the board attorney or general counsel, you're having board policy review, they obviously have to sign us off on every contract as well. But I think, again, keeping this fluid is probably the best way to do it, to see what works best. You could also do a hybrid model where you hire a staff attorney to make sure you have the right one, and while still maintaining the consistency you have with outside counsel, and then transitioning that out once you feel comfortable. So it really just has to be tailored to specifically what meets your needs, but eventually, the more hours you transition to that internal person, that's where you're gonna start to see the cost savings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone else?
Anybody else have any questions?
All right.
Well, I appreciate your time. Always a pleasure to speak to school boards. My mom was a teacher for 37 years, so I have I'm partial to school districts, and obviously I worked for them for a long time. So thank you, and it's a pleasure.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate the information. Thank you. All right, so we have a little bit more conversation on this particular matter. I know I like, when it comes to staff or board members seeking information quickly, I like the idea of, getting to that information quickly and not having to wait sometimes. Staff spends a lot of time on stuff that, go to a staff attorney. I think what I understand is, is Brian's, to make sure I understand this correctly. So if we were to go to a general counsel, board counsel, and also the blended model, the estimate would be a little bit higher, but the cost savings would be more.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So you're gonna pay a higher salary, but you should see more cost savings because they'll absorb more of the hours spent to outside counsel.
Gotcha. So I kinda like that idea. I don't know. Anyone else have any?
What are your Bob's thoughts?
Well, I've already talked to Marcus. I think his numbers are astronomically low for what he's saying he can do it for. He said he's gone to outside sources and what have you. You've got an attorney, and the way I see it, you need an attorney that can do HR, workers' comp, Neola policy, litigation, finance, contract, and bargaining at a minimum. Okay? I don't think you can find that in one person. I really don't. I just don't, I don't see you find, not anywhere near for the level of expense that has been indicated to me. Then you've got a competent paralegal you've got to add to that, which should be more knowledge, with no disrespect for our administrative staff, but which is an independent learning curve and knowledge that should be within that particular individual's capacities. I don't know where you're going to find that person at the numbers that have been quoted to me, okay? So I think those are my two biggest concerns. I don't think that it's a money saver. I don't see a district, with the exception of Flagler, that I think is a much wealthier county, that has anywhere near our size that's using in-house counsel. Everything else is at least double the size. I know our bills have been high, but we had a brand-new superintendent asking, with no disrespect to Mark, asking a lot more questions. We had a brand-new finance and internet, et cetera, technology director. We had less than 2 years' experience with the HR director. We had less than 2 years' direct experience with the MO director. We had a brand-new shift in learning. I have to believe the bill has escalated to a certain extent because of the learning curve, with the knowledge of those people coming in asking more questions that I hope will settle over time. So I think that we've seen an artificial spike in the bills over the last 2 to 3 years. That may not be accurate, but I believe it.
What was the total that we spent on Shoemaker in the 2025 calendar year?
The 2025 calendar.
However you wanna do it, either calendar year or fiscal year, whatever's easier for you to look up.
I'm gonna have to pull all these numbers.
Can I just ask one question? Oh, go ahead, that maybe I should ask while you were up here. The slide that says projected savings, and I'm kind of tagging on what Bob is talking about with the salary and what it would cost to have a staff person. does your number here, you have total expense 235,464. Does that include the additional expenses it takes to run an office? So does that 235,464, for example, include the FSBA compliance? What other fees, like what other expenses do attorneys have? They have like subscription services that they.
Yeah, not necessarily, and yeah, cause I didn't have those figures, but you're correct, that would have to be adjusted based on, say, for example, Westlaw, which would be the research system that you're mentioning, the dues for conferences and training, and obviously any additional overhead. Obviously, you have the building, so I think office space is kind of built into the process, but
So the 235,464 doesn't include all of the expenses with having it in-house.
I would say no, but I'll defer to Marcus on that.
That would just be the salary costs.
One thing I do wanna mention, because it just got brought up, when I was at Lee, I hired my staff assistant, which was kind of, I hired my staff assistant, she was a paraprofessional at an elementary school. She was originally from New York, she was a paralegal in New York, and she had significant experience as a paralegal. And she was a para, and she applied for the job, and she's amazing. She still works for me to this day. And she actually lives in South Carolina now, but she works for me remote and is my paralegal at my law firm. She's been with me for, I guess, about 7 years now. And so you'd be surprised, I know you expressed concern about what you can get. You'd be surprised as to what you could get if you actually look, right? And I say that because I came back to Lee. The salary I made when I came back to Lee was less than I made when I worked at Miami 6 years prior to that, right? But I came back to Lee because I had a family at that point. I had a house that I had previously bought, and I was bringing my family back to Lee to raise my son and my wife that I didn't have when I previously worked there. So I was drawn to the area because I owned a home there and had an opportunity there. And so they got someone like me with a lot of experience because it fell into the cards. I got my paralegal from a elementary school where she was a paraprofessional because it fell into the cards. I'm not saying that you're wrong about the expense, but I can also say that there are a lot of general counsels. I'll use Polk, for example, where the salary, I mean, we see a lot of these salaries that are like 200,000, and I'll agree with you, some of those are probably not justified, to be perfectly candid with you based on experience. But you also see some districts like Brevard, Polk, that the salaries are relatively within the range that's been proposed for this district. So there are attorneys and very good ones. I think Mr. Gibbs, who's at Brevard, I know the attorney at Polk, he recently retired actually. They actually have a very good one. The one they replaced him with is very good. But there are people that do work for that salary. I think you have an interesting county because of your location in Southwest Florida that presents a lot of opportunity for someone that's looking for that because your cost of living is substantially lower than Collier, and you got people moving out, right, because of the cost of living, which is a major factor both for employment as well as student enrollment, to be perfectly candid. I'm not disagreeing with what you said. I think it's absolutely relevant and valid points. But there are ways to find what you're looking for. It just, sometimes it has to be, fall from the sky, but I think it also matters if you have a good selection process where you go out and try to use the resources that are available at no expense to identify people that might be the right fit. I know someone that would be interested in this job. It's just that no, and I'm better is that.
We're getting down to brass tacks.
I say that because they have a really good job, but I think that, and this actually brings me to a topic too. You don't want to overload this person. People leave these jobs because they either feel overloaded, that the districts are not providing them the proper resources, which can be extremely frustrating given the volume of work that one could have. But it's not because they just don't like the work. If you do education law, you like the work. You like working with teachers, you like working for school districts. So it's like anything else. But when I see people that are just wanting to leave, it's not because they hate the job, it's just they feel like they're not being supported or have the proper resources to effectively do their job. And they're also doing that while trying to manage a family, so, again, when I talk to a lot of my colleagues in this, and I know what their frustrations are, so.
Do you have the dollar number?
260,
Over what period of time?
the 24-25 school year.
And that includes cost of a paralegal.
Yeah, that's all the bills from
That was the
Sean.
bills from Shoemaker, yeah.
Okay, well, that's, I'm sorry.
So I think the one thing everybody can
Total,
agree on.
total was 398.14 from all.
Outside
firms.
of other sources that,
I'm sorry, what's 390?
398.14.
right, and the bulk of that is outside litigation that we're gonna have to farm out almost no matter who we get in.
Probably even more. So the one thing everybody so far seems to agree on, Mr. Williams, I think Mr. Marcus, myself, I don't know about anybody else here, we're not gonna save money by doing this. And we are in a crunch budget year. There's a lot more that I could say about this, but I don't think it's necessary for me to drag this meeting on, unless there are people at this table who do want to pursue this avenue.
Well, I have another
No,
big
I have more to
concern.
say.
I do have another big concern, with all due respect to Mr. Williamson and what he said. If we get lucky and the stars fall from the sky and we get the right person, it's wonderful. But if we don't, and we get the wrong person, then we bought a pig in a poke, country boy in me. We know what we have. It has some warts, I don't know if Mike's here, but it has some warts on it, in our opinion, with what we have. But we know what we're dealing with. I know that, at least I don't believe I've been BS'd to a certain extent. I don't know when someone I don't trust as much, that I would have that same confidence level. And I do believe that with some effort on the part of the administrative team, these bills can come down.
When is the attorney contract up for renewal?
November.
In November? I
Well-
think that we need to revisit that contract.
Certainly for the FSBA attendance.
Well, beside, I think we're forgetting about, there's two aspects to look at. There's the salary aspect, are we gonna save money in the long run? I think in the long run, I think we will save money, maybe not right away, but down the road, it could be a cost savings. Our attorney fees are going up and they will continue to go up. He already said we're at a pretty reasonable price. Do they stick with that forever? But also the aspect of being able to access that staff attorney or the general counsel attorney at a moment's notice, knock on that door. And you had mentioned all the aspects that's involved. I mean, those are necessary, but we have that right now, don't we? I mean, that's in one person.
No, we have a firm, with all due respect, we have a firm he can lean across, and he said there's billing that he's seeing with them having office meetings with one another. I can tell you from personal experience, in an entirely different world, you rely on others that have different knowledge that you don't have. You pick up the phone, you call, whether you've got a bill for that, whether you don't, but you rely on those that you become comfortable with to help you when you run into a roadblock or something that you see. But I'm comfortable that it's not one person. We address the bulk of our concerns to one person, but if he doesn't know the answer, I believe he can reach across the hallway and get an answer very, very quickly, where an in-house counsel may have to reach to Orlando, people he's worked with in the past, which still doesn't make it right across the hall. He's got to get that return call. I have had no problems at all in reaching out to our counsel, getting a call back within a very short period of
Except for
time.
one time.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have those.
But I've had no personal difficulties in getting an answer to my questions within what I think is an acceptable amount of time.
Can I just say I think one of the most important things that we have not discussed? School boards in Florida have very little power and authority. I think that's something we can all acknowledge, too little power and authority. one of the one things that we do have the authority over is approving contracts. And through that statute, we have the authority to hire a board attorney who reports to us. A staff attorney will report to the superintendent, and we are giving out one little piece of power and authority that we have. And I think that's something very important to think about going forward. Mr. Williams mentioned that you could have a hybrid model, which that's gonna cost more money, right? If we maintain our outside counsel for board consultation and have a staff attorney, now you're adding to the expense of things.
Well, I believe he said, yeah, the salary would be a little bit more than what's estimated, but the cost savings would be greater.
I think, well, he mentioned kind of two things, and I'm a little bit confused on that, it sounds like you were saying we could have a general counsel, which would be somebody who works in-house and represents both the board and the staff, is that correct, Mr.
Yeah, I
Williams?
think that's the best model for you, is the general counsel that reports directly to the board, but also represents
that-
district staff.
Sorry, that general counsel would be hired and report to the superintendent, correct?
No, report to the board.
And it would be hired by the board.
It would be hired by the board, report to the board, but service the superintendent. And the only time that you would have an outside counsel come in is if there's a conflict between you and the superintendent. So yeah, to your point about authority, the model that I'm recommending, they would report to you.
But can you give me an example as to when there would be a conflict? Because our superintendent's contract states that the board, if it's an adverse matter, that the board shall not be responsible for the attorney fees for the superintendent.
So I think that's a little bit of a different scenario. I think it's a very specific scenario, but I think when you see a conflict, you could get a conflict in terms of a hiring decision. So obviously, there are two bases in which the board could reject the superintendent's recommendation for an employment decision. You often see it in that capacity. I've seen a conflict when I saw one during COVID in terms of a resolution being passed. Now, that was a extreme issue for Lee, but it's not often that you get a conflict. But when it does, the best thing you can do in that scenario is to hire outside counsel. Now, I saw one recently with Lee when they were interviewing or actually renegotiating their contract for their in-house counsel. Obviously, she can't negotiate her own contract, and someone needs to provide the board legal advice relative to her contract. So they had to hire an outside attorney to negotiate their current attorney's contract. Otherwise, there's an inherent conflict there. So it's very limited where you will see it. So it's not something that happens very often. Yeah, well, for obvious reasons, but.
So I appreciate everyone's feedback, and I agree with a lot of things that have been said at the table. But one of my thoughts, and one of the reasons I was even interested in hearing about this, is that for $260,000 what we're paying Schumacher right now, how many hours of work a week are we actually getting out of an attorney? If we have an attorney here all the time, and I really appreciate what Mr. Williams had to say about the proactive nature of it, and giving on-the-spot legal counsel to keep us out of potentially getting in trouble later on. So I do appreciate that, and I think that is something that is important to me, is that we're gonna get maybe 40 hours worth of work out of somebody for the same price. And what is that gonna do for us in a district to put us in a more beneficial position moving forward in other areas? So that's just something to consider, but I do appreciate everything you guys said, and I don't disagree with a lot of what's been said here.
Marcus, since we have you up here and you're our CFO, any thoughts or anything you'd like to add to the cost?
Sure, I mean, I know that a lot of things what Brian had talked about is, true, I know we're selective in what we're sending out because we're budget conscious, and that's one thing that I'd like to avoid because we're paying for that in the back end,
Can you give an example of like a time where maybe we didn't reach out to legal counsel and
The most recent example I have is a Final Site Blackboard contract. It cost us about $190,000 before the attorney's fees. We signed a contract, it was before I was here, but we signed a contract without reading the contract, in my opinion, and was unable,
Was this attorney to review or not?
not that I could find.
Well,
they didn't send it out because, but they're saying they didn't send it out because watching,
But I don't know if that's why the reason it was sent out
That's
or
a
not,
policy
so.
issue, that
So-
Right,
was.
and that was a different situation with an individual, whatever,
So, but that's an example of one there, that I can think of recently. You know, I know you can't control everything that an employee does, and they should
Right,
follow
and
the
we've gotta,
processes,
with all due
but-
respect, we've gotta
yeah.
get the parties involved to make sure they get that stuff to in-house counsel. Because had it may not have gotten in-house counsel under those circumstances. You're presuming it would have.
I'm assuming that it would because
Yeah.
they'd be next door, you know?
How much did you budget this year? So the attorney is budgeted in the board budget. How
Correct.
much of the board budget do you allocate for legal and attorney? And of course, that's gonna include all the other consulting firms.
Yeah, I have that split into two different sections, so I can tell you the difference here. Gotta wait for the report to run.
It's okay.
I have a question while you're looking that up
Yep.
real quick too. Is one of the things that was attached was, Escambia County did an internal audit. They did an analysis back in 2015 when they were looking at legal fees in comparison to other districts. And whether to go with in-house or outside. Have we done anything like that with an audit of our actual bills on?
So I know Mr. Williams reviewed quite a few of our bills.
Okay.
I think I sent, 3 years-ish?
Yeah,
So-
and that's what I mentioned earlier, is that you're obviously trending up, and for obviously reasons stated by board members. You know, anytime you get new staff or new superintendent, for example, you might see a spike. But ultimately, again, that could happen frequently, right? That's not something, I mean, obviously you wanna keep your superintendent, but in the nature of the education profession, you're gonna have changes, it's just naturally, organically. And so, I think that, in looking at your costs, they are rising. Again, my understanding is that is very specific to recent. But again, part of the in-house is you know what you have a fixed cost. It doesn't matter what happens. You could have an epidemic, you could have a COVID, you could have a hurricane. That's not going to change your monetary figure on the amount you're expending. But in terms of just, the overall analysis, it's dependent on, we looked at the numbers, it's rising, and again, I guess the best way to do it is take your hourly rate and create an hourly rate based on the salary or the budget that you're proposing for that position, which in a sense would create an hourly rate for that individual or that team. And then that's where you see how much it's costing your team versus how much it would cost for outside counsel. You're always gonna spend more because there's overhead and things. You know, all the overhead we're talking factored into your in-house position is also factored into your outside counsel position. That's why you got an hourly rate. Again, it depends. I'm not trying to be non-transparent on the costs. You have a good rate, and so to get to a break-even point, it's difficult on paper, but I can't emphasize to you what you're not seeing, and I can't show you because I don't know what legal issues you're gonna have. I don't know what legal issues staff is avoiding sending to legal for whatever the reasons are. But having someone there, people are going to use them. No one is not going to use your in-house counsel. If, matter of fact, they're gonna try to overuse them at times. But having someone there, you're not restricting anyone's ability, including your own, to ask a legal question. And I'm not saying that your outside counsel wasn't available, I'm not saying that they didn't respond when you did have a question, but you have someone there that's sole purpose is to be there 40 hours a week and answer your legal questions or to assist you legally. I can tell you that staff will appreciate it, I think you will appreciate it as well. And again, it's hard to quantify that for you. Because I don't know what your legal potential issues could be or are, or what wasn't sent to your outside counsel.
And I like what Kara said about if we were able to quantify how many hours, our current attorney works versus how much he makes versus staff or general counsel in-house. According to your estimate, Brian, the current expense, I'm guessing average is 300,000 plus. And
Correct.
that's just routine, we're talking routine items,
And
not.
he just said 260.
Having run a law office for almost 40 years, you're never gonna get 40 hours of work out of an attorney, you know?
They
Well,
go
not gonna
Fridays early,
happen.
right?
No, it's just, there's other things that interfere with their ability to provide services. If you get 28 hours a week, if they're there 40, you've done well. There are other things that are gonna usurp their time that aren't directly applicable to their practicing law. It's not practical to think, just because they're here 40 hours, with all due respect, that they're available 40 hours for our needs. There are other things that will eat into their time that won't let them apply themselves the same as we anticipate a 40-hour job doing,
But
so.
that, John, you said, Mr. Williams' presentation says $300,000 plus, but, Mr. Allen just said that our 24-25, the last
That was
calendar year that he's got
24.
figures for is 260.
Well, I believe what Brian said, that's kind of the average over.
Yeah, you're also projecting for this fiscal year, which isn't over.
I'm not seeing a compelling case to make a change. What I would say is that we do need to look to the future in a succession plan, because he's not going to work forever. I am in favor of what Wendy said, taking a look at the contract
Yes.
when it comes due in November. There's just, give me the job description to hire an in-house staff attorney that would have the institutional knowledge of somebody who has been in this district for 42 years, who's gone through COVID, who's gone through book challenges.
Hurricanes.
The last time around, when we, as you all recall, when we put out an RFQ, and we only had one person who applied for the job, and we were in the midst of potentially facing a 1989
83, actually.
83 lawsuit, yes, with the SPLC demand letter, and it was quite clear that the person we have within his firm had the experience to deal with something like that. I'm not saying, to make this change, I would need to see a compelling argument, and I'm not saying it.
I believe otherwise. I believe there is a compelling argument, and the benefits, to me, there is good benefit from that. Am I the only one that sees that?
I think you'd have to have the right person, as he said, you'd have to grab that, it would have to be that right person from the sky. I agree wholeheartedly with what Ms.
But
Amonte has indicated.
you don't know unless you try.
You don't know, but if you alienate the particular opportunity you have, and it goes south, not saying it would, but if it does, and then you're, I don't wanna say stuck with, but you're saddled with whatever decisions you've made. I don't see a financial benefit, I certainly don't see an institutional knowledge benefit. So, I understand exactly what we're all saying. It would be nice to walk down the hall and say, I've got this problem, what can I do with it? Well, that's saying he or she has the ability to deal with you at that moment when you walk down the hall anyhow. There may be a crisis, we've had 3 fairly recently. There may be a crisis on their lap that they just don't have time for you either, the same as when you make that phone call to outside counsel. I don't see the dollars, and I honestly think one of the worst things we can do right now is add more administrative cost to our particular budget at a time when we're dealing with the other issues we're dealing with. So I think that timing may not be right either. I'm not saying that it might not
I
be
think I feel the
something
same
to
way.
consider.
I agree with both sides of this argument too, what John's saying, what you guys are saying. I don't know that I'm ready to move forward with looking for an in-house general counsel or in-house attorney at this point, but not that that wouldn't be off the table in the future. I don't think I'm there yet.
But I am curious as to how many more years our current attorney is going to be with us.
And that may be a very good time to make that ultimate decision when that institutional knowledge goes out the door and we don't have it any longer. Because that would weigh, if I were considering it at that time, it would weigh very heavily on me then that I've lost that institutional knowledge, I'm not getting the benefit of that.
Okay.
Those are just some things.
Well, it sounds like maybe not at this point, but looking down the road when things are different, maybe it could be another possibility. We'll just kind of go from there. All right?
Yeah, no worries.
Time, Rob. Thank you.
You don't take break.
Oh, okay. Can we take a break?
5 minutes?
That you don't not.
Alright,
Never.
it's
Right, but
10:55,
we-
so we'll go on to the second part of our agenda, which is district strategic plan.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Marcus, I think Marcus will be right back.
Morning, Jeff.
I hope he is, because he's the second half of the presentation. So, we're here to talk about priority 4. Actually very excited to be here today because, since the inception of the steering committee, and especially with priority 4, there were some goals and things that were discussed at the very first meeting, that I was told about. And I really feel like in these last 3 years, we have listened, and I'm just speaking from the facility side of it. I think we have made great strides on what that committee and what our district is needed and wanted. So I'm gonna cover a lot of that today. There's a lot of stuff, so please stop me at any time if you wanna ask a specific question about anywhere, as I'm gonna we're gonna be going all over our district here with different stuff that we're gonna talk about, okay? This is our team here. Brooke will be replacing Trey on the committee as she takes over June 1st. Brooke Green is the new replacement for Trey Jane. She's our current Assistant Director of Construction. We're priority 4. We will purposely allocate resources to maximize success for all. And these are our 2 strategies. My main focus is strategy 1, systematically analyze and review facility support services for improved district outcomes. And Marcus's strategy 2. We'll get into that in a little bit. So these are some things that we've been working on and moving forward for the spring of '26. We already have the rubric, and we collaborate with the other steering groups to meet the instructional needs for our kids in our classrooms and our overall environment. And we've been working on developing long-term plans for consistent educational environments in every building. And a lot of that is due with the 5-year work plan. Some of the things I'll be talking about the 5-year work plan as we progress through this presentation. And then ongoing things is we always update facilities based on just need that presents itself during the school year. Okay, so here's where this is one of my favorite slides. Since we've started this journey, these are all things that we have already completed. And these are things that are in progress of being completed as we move along. But I'm gonna remind you, because some of this stuff goes back a bit, but it's stuff that we still need to talk about. We remodeled all of the pods at Ainger and Murdoch Middle School and the academy, full remodel at all of those schools. They've also all got brand new roofs as well. That wasn't part of the remodel, but Hurricane Ian gave us those as well. So those schools have been completely remodeled, top to bottom. The clinic, we talked about that last time. Clinic's been redone. That looks great inside, completely remodeled. Port Charlotte, there's gonna be pictures on some slides coming up. Port Charlotte High has a brand new ticket booth. We combined 2 classrooms at Port Charlotte High for their advanced manufacturing program. You guys have seen pictures of that. And again, part of the focus of the DSP was some of our older schools needed a little bit of a boost. And most of what you're gonna see is from what I call them like a lot of our pre-Charlie schools. They're the ones that survived that hurricane. We got all new furniture at Port Charlotte Middle School and Port Charlotte High, and again, these are all things that are done. Sally Jones, all new flooring, 1st and 2nd floor. The entire Port Charlotte High School exterior was repainted. All the sidewalks were deep cleaned. All of the interior classrooms and bathrooms were deep cleaned last year. And I know everybody's noticed that's made a big difference. New cafeteria flooring at Vineland, Mayaca, Liberty, Peace River, and Deep Creek. All of those cafeterias have our new plank flooring in them. Charlotte High got the new beach volleyball court. Port Charlotte High's is next, and then we'll go down to Lemon Bay. Port Charlotte High is actually the stakes that's starting out there at Port Charlotte High. So both of those will have theirs done for next school year. Port Charlotte High School concession stand is done. You'll see something looks great if you haven't seen it yet. It's very modern looking. Like I said before, it's right in the middle. It has sidewalks that shoot off to all of our different athletic fields. Looks fantastic. You guys all attended the Charlotte High and CTC airplane hangar ribbon cuttings. Both of those buildings are done. These are, now we're gonna move over to our remodels that are in progress. The book depository building has had a couple of delays, but I've been told June 1st, we'll finally have that open and the parking lot will be reopened over here. That's right over here. We'll be attending, you guys will be attending the June 23rd groundbreaking of our advanced manufacturing building out near the airport, so we're excited about that. That's gonna get started, so we'll do the groundbreaking on that in next month. The West County Transportation Building, where all we have to finish up that is the lift. The cement was poured, it's cured, just waiting from the company Thor to come in and put the lift in, and then we'll have that place. The West County Maintenance and Operations Building, the walls are up, the roof is on. That should be done by July 1st. There's some pictures of that in here, it's coming along very nicely. Port Charlotte Middle School, so this summer, you guys know all the hallways have already had the new flooring, all the classrooms are gonna now have the new flooring, and all the student bathrooms are gonna be remodeled. They're gonna look like the bathrooms on the second floor of this building. Kingsway Elementary School, the entire first floor will have all new flooring, and we're repainting all the walls at Kingsway, and we're gonna add some swag to the front entrance to Kingsway as well. So they'll have our new plank flooring all through Kingsway. It's one of our older schools. And then Ms. Samatri, I know we've talked about this one. We're gonna begin the building. We're gonna start the planning to do the field houses and the tracks at Lemon Bay High School and Port Charlotte High School. We're gonna start that process this fall for both of those schools. Get a new tracks at both schools and field houses. Now Lemon Bay will be refurbishing their track and widening it a little bit so they could have track meets, but Port Charlotte High is gonna get a whole new track and a field house. The CTC in the academy, the new roofing is going on. I covered that in both places, but yeah, they're almost done. You guys have seen them over there finishing the roof. And then I mentioned this already, we'll complete the volleyball courts at Port Charlotte High and Lemon Bay High School. And Liberty Elementary School is also getting all new flooring throughout the entire school. All of the plank flooring, all the hallways and everything. That's one of our older schools as well. They also have a brand new roof as well. And you guys know we've done a lot of remodeling in this building as well. Right behind us here, bathrooms and several new conference rooms were added here as well. Yeah.
Just a quick comment, no question. For those that are listening, these projects are all paid through capital funds. So all capital
Yes.
funds, and I think the use of those capital funds with those projects have been excellent, so.
Thank
great
you.
projects.
Yeah, and also, some of these are joint projects with some of our Hurricane Ian insurance money. We've combined them together to finish some of these, do some upgrades. So yes, very well, very good. The plan is still in the fall to get the SAC members to do survey of the exteriors of the schools. I'm gonna talk about that. You'll see some picture, landscaping group has been very busy. Got some great pictures of some things that are happening in our schools there. And then this was the same slide from last time. The team, our 3-person team is out there and there's lots of new landscaping going on. I do have some pictures of, almost every school's got new landscaping now, so I could take 20 pictures, but I took a couple so you guys can get the feel for what's going on there. But it's going very well. All the admin teams and love our new team that we have out there. Okay, this is all Port Charlotte High, this whole first slide here. This new sign was just put up, a couple weeks ago. And then here's the concession stand. If you haven't seen it, it's absolutely gorgeous concessions, beautiful concessions. And then there's some signage on the back side of it. And then that is the new concession or ticket booth for our football. Air conditioned, all new fencing. They wanted a way to keep the visitors they have fences so they can go in and just a kind of a safe, orderly way to go. We put up all of that as well. So that all flows very, very well. We worked with the school on that. Looks great. And again, as I mentioned, now this is all the new paint job from last summer, out in the school. And then here is new swag at some of our middle schools. L.A. Anger and Murdoch, you can see right there and there. The Academy got a new sign just about 2 months ago. And then that was the new sign at the Wellness Center. And then Liberty finally got their electronic sign. That was from Ian. Finally got that up and going. So I want to take a picture of that. And then Charlotte High, this one's brand new. That one kinda stopped working, if you put it that way, so that's double sided, so that's been up for about, a month. And then Punta Gorda Middle School, started some landscaping. We created this island out here in the front of the school. All the trees are trimmed. Around each of these trees, there's little mini islands there. Punta Gorda got some swag too. Port Charlotte Middle is next on the swag for their school. That is happening. And then here's Neil, their front sign, and then you can see all of the landscaping around the sign. This is all brand new, really nice looking there. Sally Jones, I'll remind you, last year we did first and second floor, so this is a look at the lobby as you walk in. Port Charlotte Middle School, all landscaped around the front, and here's one of the side views of the school, all trimmed up, mulched, some nice new plants in there. And that's the sidewalk, main hallway of Port Charlotte Middle School. So the bathrooms are down there on the left, gonna remodel all those, and all the classrooms are gonna have this in them as well, so. And 2 years ago, we repainted this entire exterior of this Port Charlotte Middle School as well. And they have a new roof. And then just some highlights of things you are aware of, but I felt it was worthy to share them again. Here's our beautiful hangar out at the airport. And of course, we did the ribbon cutting on our Charlotte High School aviation hangar. So these are some completed jobs that we've done. And this is the, most of you probably have been out there yet, but this is the West County Maintenance Building. Just from last week, the picture. So we're moving right along on that. The roof's up. Book depository right out here. And here's our landscaping in front of MCO. And that nice new lighted sign will be going in right there. It's gonna look just like this one behind us. And this is the West County Transportation Building. The new lift will be going in here. As soon as that's in, we'll be able to reopen this one here. And that's it. Any questions for me? No?
Good job.
Thanks.
I would say I'm glad that we're paying attention to the outside of our schools, because I do think it's a reflection of what happens inside, and for many years, we neglected that, so.
I couldn't agree more, couldn't agree more.
Well, I do think it's important, as Mr. Leclerc pointed out, for the public to understand, in case they're misguided, we cannot shift dollars from maintenance operations to our daily routine for costs. And when we're educating the public, they don't seem to understand that when we're spending money in this particular category. So if anybody is listening, it's important to understand that this isn't taking money away from teachers or anywhere else. It's money that's designated for these particular purposes.
So mine is less pretty. It doesn't have nice landscape pictures and things like that. But again, so my area is strategy 2. So creating the funding model that considers the school enrollment and the individual needs. So where are we at? We're finalizing the budget for the 26-27 school year. As soon as the legislative session that starts next week ends, I'm hoping that we'll be able to finalize that come mid-June and be able to have something there. But also we're implementing a high-quality comprehensive technology plan that's both sustainable and academically focused. Our ongoing steps continue evaluating priority areas 1 through 3 while we're developing the budgets, and then continue to evolve that staffing plan as those needs change, and then additionally reviewing the technology plan. So budgeting priorities, so what are we doing here? Again, we're developing staffing plan driven by student enrollment and specific needs of the school, right-sizing district-based budgets to ensure they're providing essential support functions for the schools, and evaluating priority areas 1 and 3 to make sure that they're focused on the schoolhouse. So looking at kind of a general fund, so this is over 2 years in comparison to the 24-25 school year. These are the numbers for the 25-26 and what we have proposed now for the 26-27 year. From a staffing perspective, a reduction of 19.9% at the district office, and an increase of about 3.5% allocated towards the school buildings. And then on the actual budget that we use for day-to-day expenditures, so for the schoolhouse, we're seeing about a 27% increase on that. That's as a result of we're giving additional funds per student for the schools to use. That's where they're buying their classroom supplies, materials, things like that, the principal's general fund. Same thing on the district office, that's kind of that pot of money that we use there, that pays for like software, supplies, that type of stuff, so we see the decrease there. So we're trying to intentionally shift that to make sure it's focusing at the schoolhouse.
We were able to decrease almost 28%, but giving that back to the schoolhouse.
Correct, yeah, so comparing what we had, what they were allocated in the past. So again, this is over 2 years, so we were already in process. We did this this current school year, and then this is what the total projections are looking like for next school year, so combining both of those, but yeah. And then on the capital side, when we're doing our priorities, we're finalizing a multi-year plan. That's that 5-year work plan that we do. We're in the finishing stages of that. The state finally released that, so we can, it's due in October, but the state finally released it last month, so we can send that to the June board meeting. Capital resources, improving transit maintenance buildings. You saw the nice graphs from Jeff there. And then again, modernizing the Ainger, Murdoch Middle, those types of things. The technology update on here, this first formal plan we've had in about 10 years. If you remember, they used to have digital classroom money, and there was a state template that they had to follow when requesting that grant money. That's the last time we've had a formalized plan. So you'll see on the action agenda tonight is the full comprehensive plan that our team worked on. So again, we have to be able to pay for this. We were actually very fortunate because a lot of the ESSER dollars paid for a lot of our technology upgrades at the time. So what do we do now that that's gone? We have to drive it based on a planned replacement cycle, not just try and run everything until it doesn't work anymore and then find the money to pay for it. No primary computing device will exceed 8 years of age. Right now we have a lot of devices that are old. And it takes a lot of staff effort to make them still run. So we're putting that in, and that goes for both staff, students, teachers, support staff, everybody. Standardizing all end user equipment to be consistent and to be more efficient to maintain. Some classrooms, if they go from one school to another right now, they may have different classrooms set up. So we're trying to standardize that everywhere. And then all remodels and new construction, anytime we're doing that, we're just trying to be consistent across new classroom spaces that are built to offices, and that's all in that comprehensive plan. That's all I got. That's the only picture I have. So I don't know if that's as
We need pictures.
I don't know if it's as nice as Jeff's pictures, but Any questions?
Good information, great information.
You done with
A few comments, if I may. I want to thank both Mr. Allen and Mr. Harvey. Jeff, I'll start with you and all the work that your team has been doing. I remember vividly that very first meeting we had, we brought our stakeholders together, and what we heard loud and clear is that there was an equity issue amongst our facilities. And so your group you are addressing that and you're prioritizing our capital dollars where they are most needed. And so really just kudos to you and your team for addressing that really, really important aspect of our school district. And then Marcus, what strikes me, we talk about allocating our resources to where they are most impactful to our schools and our students. And you not only talk that talk, you walk that walk. I would remind the board, which I know you know this, we did eliminate an assistant superintendent position. Mr. Allen took over those responsibilities as well, so much appreciated to all the work that you are doing and your teams are doing. We started this process last spring, really intentionally trying to reduce our district footprint and shift our resources as much as we can to support our students, and I think we're seeing evidence of that as we get into next school year as well. And then finally, just want to kind of get the feel for the board. This is the second year that we have every month presented a priority area. I believe we have started in September with priority area 1. We've used August to go over our test scores and how we did as a district, and then what our upcoming plans are from the instructional framework. And so if we like the feel for this, we can do that again in August, and do priority 1 in September, priority 2 would be October, November, priority 3, December, priority 4, and then rotate that again in the second semester. Staff talk about that all the time, and that's what we are prepared to do. But if you would like to see a different format, we can certainly be flexible as well.
I mean, I appreciate the information that we get from those presentations, and I know each year as their strategic plan evolves, there's more information, so I love the format.
Just as long as they don't feel overwhelmed with presenting to us twice, then honestly.
They're fine.
They look forward to it.
Any other thoughts on that?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And thanks for putting that together, Marcus, for tonight. That was a huge thing to put together.
Oh, the tech plan, yeah.
I do wanna.
It took a minute.
I do wanna mention that the very simple graph that you used up there, it's simple, but it conveys a lot of information.
Oh, Claudette made the graph. Again, I don't do prettiness. I gave her the numbers and she put it in the graph for me. That makes sense to people.
It emphasizes the shift of some funds directly to the classroom and how we are focused on student outcomes and making sure, like Mr. Superintendent said, our resources are directed to the students where they belong, so good job on that.
Hi, did anybody have any more questions for us?
Just one picture.
Any updates? Baker
So,
policy?
as usual, Baker Policy Council met and the agenda and the items that were discussed are in board docs. If you have any questions, let me know.
And do we need a tentative workshop? Does anybody feel that we need one? I don't. Anybody else? All right, then, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Atkinson. At this time, I will adjourn